Hello, hello, hello. It's Louise Eddington, the Cosmic Owl of Cosmic Owl Astrology, with a part 4 video on Kamala Harris, and we're going to look at her Veep pics this time. And I got my shirt. Now, I do want to say one thing about my embracing of Kamala, because I've been writing a section on my Substack blog as well. I come from a place of being really critical of the Democratic Party and rightly so, and also of some of the past, actions of Democratic presidents as well as Republican presidents. I always have leaned left. In fact, idealistically, I'm probably um far left, but I'm a recovering ideologue because um, I've realized, how extreme the other side were, but also, I will say, just collectively, and I'm not going to go and dig out charts for the Democratic Party and all things like that. I feel the Democratic Party itself has shifted. May not have shifted enough for a lot of people yet, but I think more is coming. And so a lot of my embracing of Kamala and the excitement over this is feeling the collective energy that even if it's only a shift towards a, the big adaptability change that we are moving towards, I feel that. So it's not even really about the person or the people. So as we look at the Veep pics, it just feels like representative of a collective shift. So, and it excites me. So I'm embracing it, and it's my podcast and my Substack blog. So anyway, so, even if you kind of have rightful criticisms of Harris or any of the Veep candidates from the past, I feel things are changing. Right down from the chair of the DNC to Hakeem Jeffries being the Democratic Speaker, probably the next Speaker of the House. There's something big shifted, and it's a big collective shift. And I see that as positive. And I think the Republican Party is likely to catch up as well. And we're seeing a lot of people leave the Republican, well, or just voting, for the Democrat because they feel the shift too. So, this is informed by astrology. So, people say, oh, your emotions are, believe me. Oh, you should have seen me a few years ago. I was so critical of Kamala and people like that, but I feel they've shifted too. So anyway, that's my little rant before. So anyway, so here we are going to look at the Veep candidates. There was a report yesterday that Harris's campaign's vetting team had met with 6 potential VP picks as the selection process nears its end. And we had not got those 6 before. When I did charts and cards with Erica earlier in the week, we pulled this wild card, and I was like, is it Whitmer? Well, no, it was Pete, because there was generally, he had not been formally or at least as far as I'm aware, there had not been talk about him formally being on the list at that point. And so whilst I thought it was Whitmer because I pulled a Cups card, which is very yin energy, he is a member of a marginalized group. He's gay and he's married, a gay married man with adopted kids. And so I'm going to start with him. Now we don't have a time for Pete, so but even look, if I put his time as a noon chart, this puts him at the very last degree of Capricorn, a Capricorn, and I kind of think he is. I don't think the sun moved um into Aquarius until the January the 20th that year. I would have to go back and check all that. But, we're just looking at the bigger picture here. The other thing is that because we don't have a time of birth, he's either late, very late Scorpio moon, or if he was born later in the day, Sagittarius moon. I kind of feel like he might be a Sagittarius moon. So let's move on like this. He's very vocal. His speaking abilities are kind of like, whoa, but he's also a very powerful speaker. So, this is only guessing. I don't have time to go and do rectification and things. I'm sure if he's picked, people will really start doing it. So let's move him a bit later in the day in South Bend, Indiana, where he was born, and you can see the sun is still in Capricorn, and so I do think he is 29-degree Capricorn. So let's swap them around. First, let's look at their synastry, how their charts work together. And there's a lot of energy going on in here. So he's got a Cancer North Node, which falls in her second house. So I think she would feel very supported by him. His South Node is in Capricorn and the Sun in her eighth house. And we'll look at his transits in a minute. So I think definitely she would feel extremely supported. Now, if you want to go back to her natal chart videos, I'm going to briefly cover a couple of things. But his Neptune in Sagittarius is very close to her South Node, and she has North Node and Ascendant conjunct. So, this kind of feels like, he will be very connected, kind of spiritually almost with her in so many ways. So that's great. But also his Vesta is at 27 degrees Sagittarius, and her Venus star point is at 28 Gemini. And Vesta is the state, Vesta is the hearth, all those kind of things. So, but then we go to her sun, and she's born on that full moon, 27 degrees. Incidentally, we have a full moon coming up in August at 27 degrees. And that's gonna kind of, I think it's gonna seal. It's at the convention. I think I'm seeing more excitement at the Democratic convention than there's a lot of, oh, anyway, but we'll find out, I guess. But natally, Pete and Kamala, his Pluto is on her sun. And again, I think Pluto has a heart. I think he is going to be able to really kind of dig out the best in her. He's going to help. It's going to, in Libra, I think it's going to be, a very harmonious relationship. I don't think he's trying to take power away from her. I think he's just too smart for that. I think he is going to help her and help bring that balance and stability of very Libra, sun and justice as well. So his series is on her Neptune. Also, almost like a psychic connection these two have in many, many ways. So looking at Pete's transits alone, okay, and then I'll pause and get another chart up and we'll move on. Pete has Pluto hovering over his Venus, but even more than that, on September the 1st until November the 19th, which covers the election, Pluto is going back to 29 Capricorn, and transformation, growth, reaping the rewards. It feels like just wow, honestly. I I got excited when I saw that Pete was on the list, the final list. But honestly, they've all got really good connections. So I'm not well, I'll kind of say overall at the end who I think it is. Pete's also younger. And he is that Pluto in Libra generation. So Kamala is Pluto in Virgo, generation X. And then we went to Pluto in Libra, which is more the millennial generation. So it would speak to those two generations. And he's been going through his Pluto square, and we have seen him really rise up, through his Pluto square. He's probably got a huge potential to be the first millennial president at some point. Anyway, so I don't want to make these too long. So I'm just going to pause while I get up the next candidate. I know I said I was getting the next candidate up, but I just thought of one thing that I forgot. And Pete Buttigieg's Venus star point is he was born. Look, you see how Venus and the sun are so close together. He was born on a Venus star point at 1 Aquarius, and that was on January the 21st, 1982. So he is like a double Venus star point. And with Pluto going back and forth over that adds up a notch as well for him stepping into his power. So, whoa. And I had not looked at that before. So, wow. So I'm looking at Tim Walz next. So he was born on April the 6th, 1964, which would make him a Virgo star point like me. So so he's 5 Virgo star points. So let's get that. So this is very close to her Haumea. It would be in her 4th house. I think he would be so supportive. And his Saturn is at 1 Pisces. And if you looked at her progressions, it's where her Saturn is right at the top of her chart. I think he would be long-lasting, supportive partnership. He also has Chiron in Pisces, so he kind of can tune into those wounds that she is the collective wounds and kind of that healing kind of energy that she is bringing that I've talked about as well. And if you've heard his message, he is that way. But also look at his moon. He has a moon in Aquarius, and Pluto is going back over to there as well, kind of bringing him out of the limelight. So these are really good. And Tim Waltz as well. Yes, I didn't get times of birth again. So his moon might be a different degree. So I don't know if it's out there. So let's not look too much at the moon. But look at this. His South Node and Ceres conjunction is conjunctor Ceres. I think she would feel very, very supported and nurtured by him as part of her team. And either way, I think he's going to have a big part in her administration and Pete. So amazing connections. And let me just have a look if there's anything else. They're almost the same age, you can see. His Jupiter is on her moon. We do know that her time. And that is fabulous too, because of course it's opposing her sun, and oppositions are about integration. And he would really be a big messenger for her in her 11th house, and in the 11th house of friends. I think he feels like a really good friend for her. So far, the Pete and Waltz, fabulous connections. I could keep going on and on, but I don't want to make this too long. And I'm very happy to be wrong, because they all got good connections, as I keep saying. Now I picked Josh Shapiro next. Now he is actually he's a millennial too. So he's that would be a shift from, two Gen Xers if it was Waltz, to a Gen Xer, sorry, yes, a Gen Xer and a millennial. And so he was born June the 20th, 1973, which makes him his star point 19 Aries on his Chiron. So if we just think about where that is. Now, when I look at this chart, just really kind of dipping in, he has his Pallas Athena on her sun and opposing the moon, so he can help her create strategies in many ways. He's got his Saturn on her North Node ascendant right away. And whilst I think that would also be a very steady, long-term relationship, I also wonder if he has, a little bit of a vibe about him of, kind of I think he's very ambitious and nothing wrong with that. Of, he might kind of make her feel a little bit stifled, held back. It could go either way, of course, because it's in Gemini. And here's another one with a sun that's at the last degrees of a sign. So he's very Gemini as well, though, so they get each other. But I don't know if I'm feeling this one as much. You've got some connections there. His Pluto is in her fourth house, which is okay. I just don't know if I'm feeling him as much. His North Node is in Capricorn on her series, and in Capricorn, Saturn ruled. Kind of feels his personal ambition might kind of hold him back a little bit from being like the perfect VP, if you like, which just is like setting your own ambition aside for the time being and being a real support. I just get that kind of vibe when I feel it. So that's not really a prediction. That's just how they work together. So let's have a look at the transits for him. And so I'm not going to kind of put the transits and all the kind of things. Here's the eclipse. The big eclipse that we had in April was on his Chiron, and that's a reset that can last a long time. I kind of feel like he might have a little bit of healing to do before he moves forward because it's connected to Venus and Mercury in Cancer. But having an eclipse really hit your chart like that is a pretty good sign. Again, I haven't looked for the time of birth. So Pholus and Ceres out of bounds are coming up to being on his Chiron. Ceres is stationing direct on his North Node. And so with Pholus, I don't, well, that could be good for him, to be quite honest. So but I kind of love him for Pennsylvania for now. And anyway, where is Taurus? Taurus. Looking what's going on there. Okay. But it again, the connections are not terrible. I'm being extremely picky here, if you like, because I like them all. I don't know much about Pritzker, so I'm not commenting there. I think they're all good candidates. So I'm going to pause again while I get the other charts up and all right. So Andy Bashir and his Venus star point, I looked it up and my ADHD has forgotten it already, is also an Aries star point. And I will say about Aries star points is they kind of tend to want to do things their own way. And so that was Shapiro, and this is Bashir. And I don't know if that's great for a real pick, for a VP pick. Potential leaders in the future, probably. So I also don't see a huge amount of connections, big connections between the two. He's also Mars in Leo. So, it's very direct, kind of action oriented. having both have Mars in Leo could be a little bit of a challenge, in my opinion. He's also Pluto in Libra generation with a North Node there. And so the eclipses are affecting him in a big way. And he's a good candidate as well. But again, well, I could go on and on, but I'm just not feeling that they would really gel as well as the first two, Pete and who else did I do? Pete Buttigieg and Walz are so far my top two for working well with her. Okay, so but again, none would be terrible. So in my opinion. So I'm going to kind of ditch him for a bit. He has Black Moon Lilith on her North Node, which again, I don't know if is he might bring out her real feminist kind of thing, but I don't see these major connections. Next, we'll go with Mark Kelly, who I know was a lot of people's favorites. Now, they have a lot of connections. His Sun and Mars are on her midheaven. They both have Chiron together. He was born, he's the same generation as well. He was born earlier in 1964. February the 21st, 1964, makes him that Virgo star point again. So that would be kind of at her root. So he's got a lot of potential as well. They do have Saturn's conjunct, so that can be a long-term commitment and things, but it can also have that kind of shadow of slowing each other down and feeling a little bit braked and held back. Not terribly, but yeah. His South Node is on her series close to it, and he's another one with a Cancer North Node. She seems to have picked a lot of people with a Cancer North Node who might make her feel supported and safe and secure. But he doesn't have as many connections. Okay, so but having his son up there is pretty good. But I kind of feel like he wants to shine a little bit, and really a VP should not be the one shining. They should let the president shine in a big way and be the support and ready to step in if anything happens, of course. So anyway, and then let's look at the last one is Pritzker from Chicago. He was born a little bit later, though he kind of looks really old, but so does Waltz. January 19th, 1965. He's 28 Gemini as well. He's the same star point as her. So they do have that connection. And the current star point is their star point. So that's one in his favor. Looking at other things, his Saturn is right on her Vesta, so it will have that duality, because Pisces is a dual sign of both kind of stability and support, but also, maybe kind of feeling a little bit dampening in it feels like as well. And he's a Virgo moon, so I don't know, I didn't look up the time again, so that could be opposing here, which again might help her feel supported. Again, they're all good candidates, but his South Node, North Node, look at this. His North, he shares that with her as well. Very close, the North and South Nodes. That's a really good connection too. So both share the same star point. They're almost like twins, these Gemini twins under this current Gemini star point. But looking at the transits to his chart, he's Sun, Capricorn, Pluto's back there as well, transforming something big for him. But of the two, I tend to go with Mayor Pete, who had that thing happening there. So to bring in Peter's chart again, there's a Venus up there as well, and being born right on a star point. My overall pick, just because I'm going to do it, is, oh, I don't know what's going on with my mouth. Sorry about that. It's coffee. Anyway, my overall top pick is Pete. So we'll see. You know, I'm not a predictive astrologer. I wanted to look at how they work together mostly. They're all good candidates for VP. They would all blend fairly well with Kamala and work well for her. But one other reason why I picked Pete is because of what's going on in the collective. Of it's like, why not go big or go home? There's been that whole vibe shift. Why not have the first woman, black woman, biracial, Indian and black, or Asian and black, biracial Asian and black. Sorry, East Indian, I meant, because she was born in southern East India, and a gay man. Why not? Because I think people are ready for this big shift. So that's kind of, there you go. I pick Pete. We'll see soon. Bye.